The perfect life is a beautiful, fragile thing, and when it shatters, the pieces are sharp enough to kill. Our story begins not in a dark alley, but in the sun-drenched, moneyed paradise of San Diego, California, a world of pristine beaches and perfect smiles, where Elizabeth Ann Betty Broderick had it all. She was the golden girl, the picture of mid-century American success. With her dazzling smile and fierce intelligence, she was more than just a pretty face. She was a force of nature. She met Daniel Broderick III when they were both students. He, an ambitious young man from a working-class Boston family destined for Harvard Medical School, and she a beautiful graduate of St. Mary's College working as a teacher to put him through school. This was their pact, their shared dream. Betty worked multiple jobs, scrimped and saved, pouring every ounce of her energy and ambition not into her own career, but into his. She was the architect of the Daniel Broderick success story, the unwavering foundation upon which their empire was built. They married, had 4 children, and moved into a magnificent house on Aberdeen Drive, the ultimate symbol of their arrival. Dan became one of San Diego's most renowned and wealthy medical malpractice attorneys, charismatic, powerful, and revered. Betty was the consummate society wife and mother, hosting lavish parties and ensuring everything, from the children's grades to the canapes, was flawless. They were the Brodericks. They had won. But empires, especially those built on a foundation of suppressed dreams and simmering resentment, are prone to collapse. The first crack appeared in the form of a young woman named Linda 20 years younger than Betty, a former airline flight attendant and, by all accounts, breathtakingly beautiful. Linda was hired as a receptionist at Dan's firm. To Betty, Linda was an unrefined girl, a gold digger. To Dan, she was a breath of fresh air, an escape from the wife he now saw as nagging, volatile, and emotionally exhausting. The man who had once called Betty his rock now began to refer to her as the beast. The descent was swift and brutal. Dan moved out, embarking on a very public affair with Linda. What followed was not just a divorce, it was a scorched earth campaign of psychological warfare. Dan, a master legal strategist, used the system to financially strangle and humiliate Betty at every turn. He cut off her credit cards, hid assets, and manipulated court proceedings, painting her as an unstable, unfit mother. He gained sole temporary custody of the children, a devastating blow that left Betty unmoored. Her calls to his house were met with taunts. Her pleas for reason were met with cold legal motions. She became a prisoner in her own beautiful home, a ghost haunting the gilded cage she helped build. Her anger, once sparks, became a raging fire, fanned by every perceived injustice, every court order, every smug comment from Dan and his new young lover. The legal battle dragged on for years, a bitter, expensive stalemate that drained Betty financially and emotionally. She was arrested for smashing the front door of Dan's new house with her car, an act of pure, unfiltered rage that only solidified his narrative of her instability. Meanwhile, Dan and Linda married in a lavish Hawaiian ceremony, a cruel spectacle that felt like a mockery of the life Betty had sacrificed everything to create. The final, crushing blow came in the form of a court order that awarded Dan almost all of the couple's multi-million-dollar assets and mandated that Betty would have to pay him spousal support. The system she believed would protect her had been weaponized by her husband, and she was left with nothing but debt and a bottomless well of fury. Her friends began to drift away, weary of the drama. Even her children, caught in the crossfire, were being turned against her. Betty Broderick was alone, her sanity unraveling, a cornered animal with nothing left to lose. On the morning of November 5, 1989, Betty Broderick woke up in a rented room, a world away from her mansion on Aberdeen Drive. It was the day after her 44th birthday. She dressed, drove to the home of Dan and Linda, and used a key her children had given her to silently let herself in. She climbed the stairs. A phantom in the pre-dawn quiet of the house she felt was rightfully hers. She pushed open the door to the master bedroom. Dan and Linda were asleep. Betty raised the .38 caliber revolver she had taken from her father's house. The first shot hit Dan. Linda sat bolt upright in bed, screaming, "My God! Betty! Stop!" The words were cut short by the second shot. Betty kept firing until the hammer clicked on empty chambers. Then she walked out, got in her car, and drove to a nearby Denny's restaurant. She ordered pancakes. When the police arrived to arrest her, she was calm. She offered no resistance. She told them, "I know why you're here." There was almost a sense of relief. The war was finally over. The trial that followed was a media circus, a national spectacle that divided public opinion. Was Betty Broderick a cold-blooded murderer or a battered woman pushed to the brink? The prosecution, led by a determined district attorney, painted a picture of a jealous, calculating killer who had planned the murders in cold blood. They presented the diary she kept, filled with vitriol and threats. They played the countless angry, profanity-laced messages she left on Dan and Linda's answering machine, her voice a twisted symphony of rage and pain. This was not a snap decision, they argued, but the culmination of years of hatred. The defense, however, told a different story. They argued for temporary insanity, portraying Betty as a victim of sustained psychological abuse, a woman systematically broken by a vindictive ex-husband who used his legal expertise to torment her until she simply snapped. They spoke of battered woman syndrome, a concept still novel to many jurors at the time. The world watched, enthralled. To some, she was a monster. To others, she was a tragic heroine, a symbol of every woman who had ever been cheated, lied to, and crushed by a system stacked against her. The key evidence was undeniable. The gun, her possession of the key, her own recorded voice spewing venom. But the trial's true drama wasn't about the physical act. It was about the why. The jury was tasked not just with determining guilt, but with parsing the blurred line between justice and revenge, between sanity and a breaking point. Betty herself took the stand, and for days the courtroom watched a performance that was both chilling and heartbreaking. She was articulate, witty, and fiercely intelligent one moment, then weeping and consumed by rage the next. She showed no remorse for the killings, only a defiant sense that she had finally balanced the scales. "He deserved it," she said, her voice flat and certain. The climax of the trial came not with a single piece of evidence, but with this shocking revelation of her absolute, unrepentant conviction. She believed she was right. She believed she was the wronged party who had finally delivered the verdict the courts refused to. This utter lack of remorse, this chilling self-justification became the most powerful evidence against her. The jury was deadlocked in the first trial, unable to reach a unanimous verdict, a testament to how divisive her story was. But in a second trial, the prosecution refined its strategy, focusing less on the complex marriage and more on the simple, brutal facts of that November morning. This time, they secured a conviction. Betty Broderick was found guilty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. As the verdict was read, she showed little emotion. She had lost her freedom, but in her mind, she had won her long, bloody war against Dan Broderick. She was sentenced to 32 years to life in prison, a sentence she is still serving today, having been repeatedly denied parole for her continued lack of remorse. Her children, the ultimate victims of this familial atom bomb, have been left to grapple with a legacy of love, loss, and unimaginable violence. The beautiful life on Aberdeen Drive was gone forever, replaced by a cautionary tale written in blood and betrayal. Some people aren't killed by a bullet, but by a broken promise. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.